Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
There comes a moment when you stop waiting for someone else to become what you were meant to be. That moment doesn't arrive with fanfare. It arrives quietly, in exhaustion, the kind that comes from pretending you're less than what you are. For years, you downplayed your fire to keep others comfortable. You hid ambition behind humor. You called your hunger patience to fit into rooms that rewarded mediocrity. But the truth never dies. It waits beneath the noise. There's a version of you that already knows the path. The version that doesn't beg for permission or validation. The version that doesn't flinch at difficulty. The world doesn't hand you that version. You summon it when you finally get tired of your own excuses. When you stop explaining your potential and start executing it. That man isn't built in comfort. He's forged in the silence after failure, in the late hours when no one watches. Becoming him requires betrayal of every distraction that once numbed you. It's not about aggression, it's about precision. It's the difference between motion and impact. Most people chase activity because it makes them feel alive. He chases alignment because it makes him unstoppable. He doesn't run from pain. He studies it. He doesn't wait for opportunity. He creates leverage from repetition until opportunity has no choice but to knock. He doesn't seek followers. He becomes the example people copy. To reach that state, you must destroy the soft version of yourself, the one that apologizes for wanting more. Becoming him starts when you stop chasing recognition. The crowd cannot crown what it cannot comprehend. He moves in silence because the noise of attention distorts focus. While others post proof of effort, he builds empires in the dark. He doesn't measure progress by applause, only by precision. That's the art, to stay obsessed without showing it. Every step forward is invisible until it becomes undeniable. The man you were born to be doesn't chase attention. He commands it by existing in a way that cannot be ignored. Real power doesn't announce itself. It simply arrives. He carries calm like a weapon, not the kind born from arrogance, but from control. He doesn't overreact. He observes. While others drown in emotion, he studies patterns. He understands that self-control is the foundation of all dominance. The louder others get, the quieter he becomes, because silence unsettles the untrained. Calmness under fire terrifies those built on instability. He knows composure is currency. That's why he never rushes decisions. He's not in competition with noise. He's in partnership with time. Every reaction saved becomes energy redirected toward creation. His stillness isn't passivity, it's lethal restraint. His confidence doesn't come from words. It comes from evidence. The evidence of self-discipline, of consistency, of promises kept in private. He doesn't talk about potential because he's too busy converting it. His pride isn't in what he owns, but in what he can endure. He knows that consistency compounds faster than talent. Every day he moves forward, he builds equity in himself. He doesn't chase validation because he's built internal proof. When you live that way, no opinion can touch you. You don't need approval when you've mastered alignment between thought, word, and action. That's how conviction is born, not from belief, but from proof. Becoming that man means cutting ties with comfort. Comfort whispers that you have time. It convinces you to rest before you've earned fatigue. He rejects it. He sees comfort for what it is, the death of urgency. He chooses pressure because pressure reveals. Every time he feels it, he remembers that growth never happens in balance. Balance is maintenance. Pressure is creation. He doesn't seek motivation. He builds systems that force results. You cannot become formidable by chance. You become it by choice, by repetition, by burning softness out of your habits until only precision remains. He protects his mind like a fortress. No gossip, no negativity, no aimless comparison survives in his presence. He knows the mind becomes whatever it consumes, so he curates every input with surgical intent. His focus is not superhuman, it's disciplined selection. He doesn't need to know everything. He needs to master the few things that matter. Every scroll, every conversation, every hour is an investment or a leak. Nothing in between. He understands that attention is the rarest currency of all, and he refuses to spend it on distraction. That's how he stays ahead, by staying aware. He doesn't fear solitude. He seeks it. Solitude is where clarity sharpens. It's where he dissects his own motives until nothing false remains. He doesn't need a crowd to feel alive, because he's learned to generate momentum alone. In solitude, he becomes unbreakable. While others need motivation from the world, he builds it from silence. He doesn't run from isolation, because he knows it's the birthplace of transformation. When you stop fearing being alone, you stop fearing being misunderstood. That's when you step into power that doesn't depend on anyone's permission. He refuses to negotiate with mediocrity, not in others, not in himself. He doesn't compromise his standards to be liked. He doesn't dilute his ambition to be relatable. Every time he's told to be realistic, he smiles, because realism is just the vocabulary of people who've already surrendered. He lives by a different code, to build what doesn't exist yet. He knows that greatness has never been convenient. It demands cost, it demands focus, it demands exile. But he's willing to pay it all because he's seen what the alternative looks like. Regret disguised as peace. The mind is not a quiet organ. Even in silence, it burns. At rest, it consumes a fifth of the body's energy, translating imagination, fear, and memory into chemical fire. That means every thought has a cost. Every hour spent spiraling in anxiety drains you like a marathon you never ran. People think exhaustion comes from movement, but the truth is more brutal. Overthinking can burn you down faster than labor ever could. When you worry without action, the brain loops endlessly, feeding on itself. Energy meant for creation turns into static. Your body feels fatigue not because you've done too much, but because you've done nothing with direction. Movement organizes chaos. Work refocuses the storm. Thinking too long without execution empties you from the inside out. The body was designed for motion. Evolution built you to move through uncertainty, not sit and analyze it. When the mind fills with fear, your heart rate rises, your muscles tense, your breath shortens. That's biology begging for movement, not panic. But instead of acting, people freeze, letting fear metabolize their energy until they feel paralyzed. The cure is not stillness, it's purpose. Worry is wasted electricity. When you shift from thought to motion, the same energy that once drained you begins to fuel you. The brain rewards movement with dopamine, with focus, with calm. You were never built to think endlessly. You were built to act decisively. An idle mind burns brighter than a working one, but it produces nothing. Every worry is a task disguised as emotion. When you sit and replay the same scenario in your head, your brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. It burns calories as if you were living it over and over. That's why anxiety leaves you tired without reason. It's why fear consumes your stamina before anything has even happened. The mind wants resolution. Give it direction, and the energy reorders itself. Action is the antidote to overthinking. Every step forward silences 1,000 hypothetical fears. Intentional movement doesn't just conserve energy, it multiplies it. The moment you begin doing something, blood flow increases to the brain, feeding oxygen to the very circuits that were suffocating under indecision. You regain access to logic, to clarity. That's why clarity never comes before action. It comes during it. People wait for certainty before they start, not realizing that starting is what generates certainty. The brain's chemistry rewards forward motion. The difference between fatigue and flow is intent. Without it, you drift. With it, you build momentum. Energy is not lost, it's redirected. Worry is a thief disguised as thoughtfulness. It tricks you into believing that replaying possibilities is productive. But worry without execution is just entropy in disguise, energy unraveling into nothing. The brain evolved to predict outcomes, not to dwell on them. When you use it to replay fears, it keeps resetting itself, draining glucose and oxygen with no return. Work, on the other hand, completes the circuit. It gives the mind a direction for all that power. That's why discipline feels lighter than indecision. The more you do, the more your brain stabilizes. The less you move, the louder the noise becomes. The most dangerous form of burnout comes from inaction. You think rest will fix it, but rest without direction only magnifies the noise. The brain was designed to solve, not stall. Every problem you delay becomes a background process consuming your mental RAM. The cure is to finish what you fear. Once the action begins, the noise dies down because the brain registers closure. That's how peace is earned, not through endless thought, but through movement that completes what the mind started. Intent burns cleaner than worry. Purpose is fuel efficiency. People who move with intention burn the same biological fuel as everyone else, but they transmute it into results. Those who dwell on problems exhaust themselves in imagination, mistaking mental fatigue for hard work. The difference between them lies in focus. One channels energy toward direction, the other dissipates it through doubt. When you decide what matters and commit to it, the brain begins conserving energy for that goal. That's why clarity feels energizing. It tells the body what to stop caring about. Every wasted thought compounds. Every unnecessary argument, every comparison. Every imaginary battle drains calories that could have been spent building something real. You think fatigue comes from overwork, but most fatigue is the residue of meaningless thinking. The mind doesn't tire from labor, it tires from loops. When you stop reacting to everything and start directing your focus, the brain recalibrates. You begin to feel lighter, faster, sharper, not because life got easier, but because you stopped wasting your energy on what you cannot control. Discipline isn't just about consistency, it's about conservation. Each time you act instead of overanalyze, you reclaim energy that would have been burned by hesitation. Work and rest both feed you when done intentionally. Worry consumes you no matter how much you rest. The discipline to act without overthinking is what separates exhaustion from endurance. You are not tired because you've done too much. You're tired because you've resisted what you already knew you had to do. The longer you avoid it, the more it drains you. The mind romanticizes transformation, but the body only respects increments. Real evolution happens through percentages, not miracles. Add 10% more effort each week. Not enough to break you, but enough to remind your comfort that it no longer controls the pace. This is how mastery is built, one deliberate increase at a time. Every small stretch becomes a message to your nervous system that survival now means expansion. You're not chasing pain, you're courting precision. This is what separates growth from destruction, the ability to hold discomfort without collapsing into chaos. You don't need a revolution, you need 10% more truth in everything you do. Discipline matures through calibration, not extremity. Anyone can sprint once. Few can sustain deliberate acceleration over years. The body adapts faster than the ego accepts. The first few weeks of pushing harder expose illusions you've carried. the belief that effort should feel heroic, that growth should feel gratifying. But the truth of mastery is monotony. Incremental improvement feels almost invisible until one day the line between who you were and who you've become is unrecognizable. Every 10% stacks. Every controlled discomfort compounds. Consistency is slow fire, not explosion. The ego collapses when it can no longer hide behind comparison. 10% more work removes the illusion of talent. It reveals who's actually willing to bleed for precision. The ego thrives on extremes, either all in or not at all, because it fears accountability in moderation. Controlled discomfort kills that vanity. When you work methodically, when you build 1 inch at a time, the noise disappears. There's no glory in 10%. There's no applause. There's only the quiet rhythm of daily defiance, and that is where identity hardens. Growth hides behind thresholds the body wants to avoid. It lives in the last few seconds of endurance, the final page of fatigue, the extra repetition no one else completes. That's the hidden space where evolution begins. The difference between average and exceptional is not talent, it's 10%. That extra 10% tests your mind's obedience to your will. The body adapts easily. The ego fights it. Each increase strips away vanity, leaving only the truth that progress doesn't reward emotion, it rewards execution. Adaptation is nature's oldest law. You give it a challenge, it builds resilience in return. Every week you add controlled pressure, your nervous system becomes more efficient. Muscles, focus, tolerance, patience all sharpen. The trick is control. Growth built on chaos collapses. Growth built on calibration becomes permanent. You don't need to conquer mountains every day. You just need to lift slightly heavier ones. 10% every week sounds small until you look back and realize you've doubled your capacity without breaking. That's the mathematics of mastery. Controlled discomfort teaches you the language of endurance. You stop mistaking fatigue for failure. You learn that resistance is proof of recalibration. The body resists new intensity not to punish you, but to adapt. The ego, however, hates this. It demands comfort, praise, and visible proof. But the deeper truth is that all great transformations are invisible first. You suffer quietly, build silently, and emerge suddenly. Growth doesn't ask permission. It waits until you've earned enough consistency to deserve visibility. The 10% rule ensures you stay patient enough to reach that stage. The body respects repetition more than motivation. Every increase tells your cells that stagnation equals death. Nature has always rewarded those who evolve by choice rather than force. You don't need chaos to change. You need structure that hurts just enough to make comfort unlivable. When effort rises deliberately, the ego can't claim ownership. The process takes over. You stop asking whether it's working. You just keep moving because stopping would mean betrayal. That's when transformation becomes permanent, when discipline replaces debate. Growth is not about ambition, it's about alignment. 10% more effort forces you to operate closer to truth. It humbles you because incremental difficulty eliminates fantasy. You can't fake endurance. You can't pretend progress. You either show up or you don't. The ego shatters when faced with the mirror of consistency. The only thing left standing is your core, the version of you that does not need to talk about results because they've become inevitable. Every deliberate increase chisels away illusion until only substance remains. There's a difference between pain and precision. Pain breaks, precision builds. The goal is not to destroy yourself through extremes, but to dissolve your limits through constancy. The ego demands visible leaps. The wise demand sustainable steps. You earn greatness by layering discipline on top of exhaustion, clarity on top of chaos, and humility on top of progress. The body rewards this rhythm with strength. The mind rewards it with stillness. You don't conquer yourself in a day. You evolve through deliberate discomfort. The mind does not believe words, it believes evidence. You can repeat affirmations until your throat goes dry, but until action backs them, the subconscious calls your bluff. Identity is not written in language, it's programmed through behavior. The self-image you carry today is not a reflection of your dreams, but a record of your repetitions. Every action, every small decision teaches your mind who you are. Talk without movement creates confusion. Movement without noise creates certainty. If you want to change who you believe yourself to be, stop arguing with your reflection. Show it proof. Act like the version you envy until the evidence becomes too overwhelming for the brain to deny. Self-image is elastic, but it stretches only when challenged by behavior. You can't think your way into a new identity. You must behave your way into one. Every time you act beyond your comfort, the mind updates its definition of possible. It stops identifying you with your past and starts sensing with your performance. The problem is that most people treat change as a negotiation. They want to become more while still doing less. But the subconscious has no patience for hypocrisy. It mirrors what it sees, not what it hears. When you start behaving as if you've already become, the brain accelerates the transition. The human mind is a pattern-seeking machine. It looks for consistency between self-perception and behavior. When they misalign, tension appears, cognitive dissonance. Most people run from that discomfort, returning to old habits to restore inner balance. The few who push through it use that tension as fuel. Acting like the person you envy creates conflict between who you are and who you're becoming. That conflict is sacred. It's not confusion, it's transformation. The mind hates inconsistency but loves resolution. So it will eventually shift your identity to match your new behavior. That's how evolution works, through repetition until belief has no choice but to surrender. There's a reason great performers train like champions before they're recognized as ones. They're not pretending. They're calibrating identity. The brain doesn't wait for external validation to form belief. It responds to ritual. Show up like the version you admire long enough, and your nervous system adapts to the new standard. That's how confidence grows, not from motivational talk, but from experiential evidence. Every time you follow through on what you said you'd do, your self-respect deepens. Every broken promise, no matter how small, erodes it. The equation is simple: your actions are votes for who you believe you are. The reason envy burns is because it reveals suppressed potential. When you see someone operating at a level you desire, it's not jealousy, it's recognition. It's the mind reminding you what's possible if you stop underperforming your vision. But most people respond to that mirror by retreating, labeling greatness as arrogance to protect their comfort. The right response is imitation, not of their personality, but of their patterns. Study what they do, how they think, what they tolerate, and start replicating it. Identity doesn't shift in theory, it shifts in practice. The fastest way to dissolve envy is to act like the version you envy until the difference disappears. You cannot heal insecurity with words. Insecurity dissolves when action builds credibility. Every time you do what fear said you couldn't, the brain rewrites its script. You no longer need to convince yourself that you're capable because evidence speaks louder than affirmation. This is the psychology of self-alignment. The old identity fights back at first, whispering that you're faking it. But that's not deception, that's reprogramming. Keep behaving above your current self-image long enough, and it updates automatically. The gap between belief and behavior closes only through repetition. Acting like your higher self is not performance, it's prophecy. You're not pretending to be better. You're revealing what's buried beneath hesitation. The subconscious mind records every decision. It keeps score. Each time you choose the path of integrity, each time you show discipline instead of delay, you're voting for the next version of you. Eventually, the votes accumulate and identity tips in your favor. You start thinking, walking, and creating from a higher baseline. You no longer need to visualize confidence, you embody it. You no longer need to chase success, you attract it by consistency. The hardest part of becoming that version is surviving the void between effort and evidence. The first few weeks of transformation always feel fraudulent because the results haven't caught up yet. That's where most people quit. They want proof before persistence. But you must understand that belief trails behavior, not the other way around. The self-image upgrades only after enough consistent proof is presented. That's why you act first. You don't wait for validation. You generate it. The discomfort of that in-between phase is proof you're rewriting the code. Stay long enough and identity will sink naturally. Every legend, every builder, every fighter once pretended they were better than they were. But they weren't lying. They were training. Confidence was not given to them. It was earned through relentless evidence. When you act like you've already become, the brain recalibrates to match that image. You no longer rely on external recognition to feel real. You stop seeking validation because your own record becomes undeniable. Self-image follows data, not dialogue. Every consistent action builds a portfolio of proof. That's how ordinary people turn into examples.